Welcome to the final October edition of The Score with Brett Wiseman here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm sporting a bit of a Halloween scary movie themed shirt. Steve Wiseman not sporting anything scary apparel wise, but
just this
was in a place last weekend that is scary to a lot of other teams. Duke, however, was not scared when they went in there. I know there's no such thing as moral victory, Steve, but it sure to me seemed like there was a lot of positives to take away from that, from the Blue Devils' perspective, in terms of they really gave the Seminoles a run for their money.
I mean, they did. They carried a 20-17 lead into the fourth quarter. So I know that's what they wanted, right? They wanted to be in the game in the fourth quarter. And then you try to steal one on the road when you're playing one of the best teams in the country, one of the most talented teams in the country. And they were able to get Riley Leonard back for the whole game till the end of the third quarter. They're late when he got hurt again. They had a 17-7 lead. They're up 10-0 and 17-7. And, the game really turned on that kickoff return that Florida State did because the air was totally out of that building. And when it was 17-7, and then they returned the ensuing kickoff for a touchdown, and that amped it back up again. But no, I mean, Duke did a lot of things well. They didn't play their best game, which is what you need to win there, because the offense, the offense wasn't as good in the fourth quarter, mostly because Riley Leonard, and then the defense gave up a 96-yard drive when Florida State took the lead. But they're not happy with it. But from your point of view, you're right. They went in there and had the lead in the fourth quarter, and that's about all you can ask for.
It is. And, you said it, 10-0 lead, 17-7 lead. The game really swung on that kickoff return, but there's a lot of things that Duke was able to do well against this Florida State team that not a whole lot of other teams can say that they've been able to do. So, loss or not, there is still a lot of momentum to carry into this week. The only question mark being the status of Riley Leonard.
Yeah, it's kind of like last week where, they're seeing what he can do in practice. They'll check and see what he can do the day before the game, the day of the game, how stable the ankle is, if he can protect himself, from the rush. Because the only thing that knocked him out, was an illegal hit, right? I mean, the guy grabbed his face mask and ripped his helmet around, and his whole weight came down on his right ankle. That's just how it happened to be. I mean, the guy didn't do it on purpose as far as like trying to hurt him that way, but he, it was an illegal hit that took him out. And that those things are going to happen. But I think he's probably going to give it a go again because he was on the sidelines in the fourth quarter. I'm sure people saw on TV. He was back there running, trying to convince, hey, I can go. Look, I'm running. I'm fine. And by that point, they were like, you know what? This it's out of hand. Let's not do this again, Save for next week. So I think he'll probably play against Louisville. I'd be surprised if he doesn't.
Yeah, it seemed like more of an abundance of caution, especially at that point in the football game, than anything else. I had flashbacks to when you talk about that. He had flashbacks to the old coach of your Big Red St. Louis Football Cardinals with the famous mic'd up clip of, well, our quarterback got clubbed in the face and the neck right there. I hope he's going to live, but that is a penalty. The first thing that entered my mind was that clip, but it was so crazy, and it speaks to the electricity of Florida State into how quickly they turned it from 17-7 to they're going to run away with this thing. In the span of 5-8 minutes time, it really felt like you blinked twice and it was a 2-score game.
And that's what they've done to a lot of teams this year. They've been better in the fourth quarter than everybody they've played, Boston College excluded, on a weird day, right?
Right.
But even then, they held on to win the game. But even LSU, they pulled away in the second half, right? So they just come at you with loads and loads of talent, and you stop them for a while, and then they've got an extra gear they find, and that's what championship teams do.
Yeah, it's like a hockey team with a really good forecheck. You wear a team down long enough, they're going to get a little bit weary. They're going to fall by the wayside. You ask the Boston Bruins about that. in 2019. But
there you go.
anyways,
that's a good memory.
Not me trying to live in the past or anything like that. But Florida State, it doesn't get harder, but it also doesn't necessarily get easier. It's another one of those noon kickoff road game ABC kind of situations, much like the Boston College game earlier in the year against Wake Forest here. This is a Wake Forest team that we said you knew the 3 games you had to win if you were Wake Forest were Pitt, NC State, and Syracuse if you wanted to get to 6-6 and get to a bowl game. You got the Pitt win out of the way. You're 4-3. The spread went from 19.5 to 20.5 when I blinked just now. I mean, it was 19.5 like 5 minutes ago. I just pulled it back up and now it's up to 20.5. But from the Florida State perspective, I feel like the coaching staff is turning a lot back to that BC game and going, hey, the last time we were in this situation, these are the things we didn't do well. There seemed to be a fog over them at that point. The weather is really going to be similar to Tallahassee Saturday. It's going to be hot, humid, 3 days before Halloween. Not normal, not ideal either. But from the Seminoles' perspective, I think they have to turn back to that BC game and try and avoid falling victim to the same early game kickoff traps that they did in that game.
For sure. And they're coming off, a big win. Maybe, in some Florida State people's minds, a win over Duke isn't a big win, but I think the players know they were in a battle till the fourth quarter, right? So
right.
They don't want to have a letdown, going on the road. Now they've had trouble with Wake in recent years, right? So Wake's been a team that's proven to be able to beat them in last few years here. So not ancient past. So they're going to have to be on their game. They're going to have to be, they have far more talent than Wake, so they should be able to do it. But then they had far more talent to be, more than 2 points ahead of BC. But they're going to have to. This is one of those when you're on a run like this and you're on a season where you want to be in the playoff, you're going to have to fight through some human nature and get through a game like this. And Wake's going to try to take advantage of them early and try to get them on their heels.
And this is one of those games that the committee likes to circle come decision time and go, okay, yeah, we expected you to win that game. How did you win that game is what they're
right. Game control. Game control. Exactly.
Because if it turns out to be like the BC game and Florida State just kind of ekes out of there with a 3, 6, 7 point victory, the committee might start taking another step back a bit. If they cover the spread here and blow Wake out by 4 touchdowns, nobody's really going to bat an eye at it. Exactly.
And that's what Florida State has to do if they want to ensure themselves that they're going to get into the playoff, because they're going to have, Florida's not a great team this year. They're going to play them at the end of the year. And then they're going to play, either Duke or Louisville or Carolina probably in the championship game. So that'll be another team that's probably ranked at that point, but not a top 10 team. They don't have any more top 10 teams on their schedule. So they're going to have to do it with some style points here against some of these lesser teams they're playing.
They got an FCS school thrown in there too. The next 4 weeks after Wake Forest this week, they're at Pitt on November 4th, home against Miami. Then they have North Alabama, the FCS school, and then Florida in Gainesville the last week of the regular season there on Thanksgiving weekend. So, yeah, all the ranked teams are out of the way, and they've already played Duke. They don't have to play Louisville, and they don't have to play Carolina in the regular season. So they have the head-to-head win against Duke, so they can say they got that, which in essence makes this Duke-Louisville game even more important than it was before the Florida State Duke game.
That's right, because it's important for 2 things. Number one, the winner of it is still in the running for that second slot behind Florida State in the ACC standings to play in the title game. Number 2, if Duke wins, it improves Florida State's outlook, right? Their net, if this was basketball, it'd be good for their net to go with the LSU win at the start of the year. So
still don't understand what that means.
they've got to root for LSU to win some games here down the stretch too. So
Yes,
that would help them. But anyway, if they win out, they're going to be fine. But you know, you don't want to leave any chances. And but so Duke and Louisville is a very important game in this race for 2 because Carolina lost to Virginia last week, right? That opened this up.
Oh, we're getting to that. Trust me, we're getting to that.
Okay.
Don't spoil the moment because look, people who know me know how I feel about the University of Chapel Hill. So I would just like to say, with the greatest and utmost happiness, how pleased I am that your far-fetched playoff dreams have not come true. Okay, maybe they weren't as far-fetched as I made them out to be 3 weeks ago. They were actually pretty realistic, to put it unbiasedly. But I have to say, as a noted Carolina disliker, I was very pleased with the Wahoos and what they were able to do. But it was just such a shocking result, Steve. You know, the ripple effects of this, not just in the ACC championship conversation, but, Carolina fans were looking at the remainder of their schedule and going, yeah, we don't really see a game we have to be concerned with at this point other than Duke. Well, guess what?
And the kids played like it, didn't they? And again, that wasn't a game I was able to watch a lot of because I was in Tallahassee. But I just kind of monitored it, and I saw Carolina got a lead in the second half, thinking, okay, they've messed around enough. They're going to go ahead and take this and win it. And then Virginia comes back. Even at the end of the game, I did have it on a second screen while I was watching the game. When Virginia fumbled through the end zone, like the worst rule in football, where you fumble through the end zone, the other team gets a touchback.
Yep.
I thought, okay, well, that's going to do it. That's Virginia. That's the break the Tar Heels needed to beat this bad team, right? And then the Tar Heels couldn't do anything with it. Drake May couldn't get down the field and score. Amazing. It just
it's so odd that that's when the first loss came. That they went through the non-conference gauntlet that they had. They beat South Carolina. They beat App State in double overtime. They get through the conference schedule to this point, and then ultimately they succumb themselves to the worst team in the ACC and one of the worst teams in all of FBS football.
They hadn't beaten an FBS team all year.
No,
they were bad. They got blown out a lot. They've been stumbling around for a year and a half now under Tony Elliott, and you walk, and then Carolina was at home. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
There were so many reasons not to lose that game, and you said it. A lot of the fans kind of looked past it, assumed it was going to be a win. The kids played like that too.
They did, and that's on Mac Brown. I mean, it's on the kids too, of course. They're the ones in between the lines, but that's on the coaching staff. You got to keep them locked in for every game. And I know they're men, not machines, right? So they're not, you can't just plug and play. But that's how good seasons get ruined right there. And that's what happened. And they're not. I don't see how they're going to be able to recover from that. As far as, there's no playoff. It's like they're not going to get into the playoff even if they went out and they're 12-1 and beat Florida State. But that one loss, that'll be enough to keep them out.
Right, because that's when you start looking, as the committee, you start looking at, all right, their only loss was to Virginia. The Florida State's only loss was to, or Ohio State's only loss was to Michigan, or Georgia's only loss was to Alabama in the SEC championship. Yada, yada, so on and so forth. They're going to look at when we get to the point of we've run out of unbeaten teams because there aren't that many. That's when the committee starts looking at, okay, you lost to this team. That loss looks better than this loss because this team, you start stacking the pennies and all that. And that loss to Virginia is always going to look bad, regardless of what you do the rest of the season.
And regardless of what they do the rest of the season, it's not going to age well.
Look, Virginia could win the next 5 games and end up 7-5, go to a bowl game. Committee's not going to care. You lost to 1-5 Virginia, whose only win prior to was against an FCS program.
Right, at home. You lost at home.
At home.
Yeah. So
you lost to Virginia
sorry.
at home.
You blew
no
it.
excuses.
You're done. You're done.
You're done. Bye.
Move
See
on.
ya. Back to that Duke Louisville showdown that's impending. This is a pretty potent Louisville Cardinal offense. What are Mike Elko and the staff dialing up defensively for a game plan to try and slow this offense down?
Yeah, so once again, like, went into last week's game and Duke was 4th in the country and only allowing 9 points a game, and Florida State was averaging 42.4. And they did hold them under their average. They got 38 with kickoff return, so it wasn't great, but they did. Duke will find a way to slow Louisville down somewhat. That game again, it was 20-17 going into the fourth quarter, so it took Florida State a while to get rolling, and then once they had it going, Duke was kind of gambling there and stuff, going for it on 4th down in their own territory, things like that. So Louisville's been a pretty good running team, and Duke's been they can stop the run decent. They got a pretty good front line there. The key also that hurt Duke last week was Miles Jones did not play, who's far and away their best cover corner. Like if you look at the PFF, Pro Football Focus stuff, his score is like 90.6, and everybody else is in the 70s. The 70s usually pretty good, 70 or 80, and he's 90.6. And they missed him with a lower body injury. I don't know if he'll play against Louisville. I'm thinking not. So that's a big cog in their defense not playing, because that's a shutdown corner on that side. You know what that can mean to a defense. So that hurts. But regardless, they have a good front four, and the linebackers are playing well. Trey Freeman has come on, so I think they'll be able to prevent Louisville from doing big things on offense. I really do, even without Miles Jones. Oh, that would kind of cinch it, because I just think I watched Louisville against NC State a couple weeks ago, and it was 13-10. So I think Duke has a better defense than NC State. So that's kind of what I'm basing that on.
Yeah, and then again, you note that, but then you look at that Notre Dame game and what that Louisville offense was able to do against a top 10, 15 Notre Dame defense. So some things are anomalies, but
they are.
It remains to be seen. That's why they play the game.
That's right.
They don't play it on paper. There's a reason for that. All right. So again, since you're an AP voter, we'll get your scope of the national landscape. Unfortunately, I must tell you that this is the final week where people really pay attention to the poll that you vote on. And then everyone kind of starts to shift their attention away from the AP poll, right, to the CFP poll. Not that the AP poll still doesn't matter. Steve still votes on it because it's part of his job. But, this is the last week before playoff rankings. But there's, aside from the Florida State Wake game, there's another potential undefeated trap game in that noon window. That Oklahoma-Kansas game for Oklahoma scares me, because Kansas has had their number the past couple of years.
They have, and if Daniels was healthy at quarterback, I would feel better about that, because I actually got to see Duke played at Kansas last year. I got to see them up close in person, and I really think their offense is good with him. He's been banged up for a few weeks now, and that's really hurt them a lot. So, but again, Oklahoma kind of stumbled around last week with UCF, right? They were very fortunate to win that game. So we'll see if that's the wake up call. If they're like, okay, we can't play with our food this week. We got to actually go out there and play well, And but that could be a trap game. You're right. That could be one. If they're overlooking, in Kansas, it's a pretty good team. They're a well-coached team.
And you said it. I think if Daniels was healthy at quarterback, I'd feel a lot better about it. But there's another part to this. Oklahoma's got Bedlam next week. So you've got twofold the Kansas factor of they've had your number the past couple of years. You got to catch yourself not looking ahead to Bedlam and the rivalry game next week in Stillwater.
Big time. So this is on Brent Venables, just like it was on Mac Brown last week. Not let his team get get ahead of itself, and Venables has to do it.
Probably the best matchup of one-loss teams in recent memory is Oregon and Utah. And this is going to be fun. Again, no Cam Rising for the rest of the year, by the way, but we'll get to see Bo Nix start his 1,050th FBS game as he just turned 35. I'm kidding. This is an Oregon team that still seems like it's kind of reeling off that Washington loss. I think that's a game that they thought they had, and it kind of the rug kind of got snatched out from under them. This is a Utah team that's got a top 10 defense in the country that has made a lot of teams look really, really silly on the offensive side of the ball. And the only other team that's been able to do that to this point to Oregon has been Washington. This is really the game, Steve, of playing. This is basically the second place game in the Pac-12, I think, because either one of those teams, I think, will end up beating. I need to see if either one of those teams end up beating USC. Oregon and USC is in 2 weeks. Oregon's at home. I'm sorry. I don't see USC winning that game.
Right.
Utah does not play USC, or Utah already played USC. Sorry. Utah won that game by 2.
Right.
So Utah's got the head-to-head win over them. I don't see USC going into Autzen Stadium and winning. So for me, this is your de facto who plays Washington in LA for the Pac-12 title.
Right. The winner will stay up in the top 10. The loser will drop out of the top 10, or not get to the top 10. You know what I'm saying there. And yeah, they're lining up to play Washington. Oregon wants another shot at Washington for sure. You know that. And Utah wants their shot. So this will be it. It's the regular season is very important in college football. You get playoffs along the way, right? So this is one of them.
This is one of those mini playoff games. Well, it's not a mini playoff game. It is my favorite rivalry game name. Of course, that's the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. That would be Georgia and Florida. Florida's a 14.5-point dog. I don't want to say take them to cover, but it may be a good idea. I don't know. It may be worth it. Remains to be seen. One more trap game I want to get your thoughts on, though. Third-ranked Ohio State's on the road at Camp Randall. They're also a 14.5-point favorite. But as you know, that is never an easy place to play, especially for an Ohio State quarterback that's still trying to find his footing in terms of experience.
Yeah, they're coming off, they had the big win over Penn State, and really it's kind of smooth sailing mostly, right? Unranked teams until they play Michigan. So
right, you've got Wisconsin, Rutgers, Michigan State, and Minnesota thrown in there, but this is really okay. Yes, Rutgers is 6-2. They haven't played the same teams that Wisconsin's played. Okay,
right. So this is one that Ohio State has to be careful about. And Wisconsin, I thought they were going to be a better team this year from the start, and they haven't proven to be, what a top 15 team like they look like they might be. But Luke Fickell's a good coach, and I think Ohio State's got to be careful. Let's see if they can get in there. I want to go back to Georgia, Florida, real quick if I could.
Yes.
Georgia has kind of not lived up to their reputation this year, right?
Slow starts.
That's a team where, and I've kept it number one on my ballot the whole year. I mean, they've won the last 2 titles, so they have to do a lot to drop out. But there's this like built up negative momentum is what I'm trying to say. Like if they do trip on somebody and lose, they're going to fall like 10 spots on people's ballots because we've been kind of giving them that little, okay, you're Georgia, you're okay. So maybe this will be the one. Florida took care of Tennessee earlier this year, and I mean Florida's not. This isn't a great Florida team, but
no, and it's still a good Tennessee team that they were able to beat too. That's no slouch in Tennessee.
Exactly. So I keep waiting for Georgia to have one where they don't escape and do it. I mean, they took care of Kentucky pretty good, sent a message that they really are, what we think they are. But again, they've been kind of messing around this year too. They haven't been dominating like we thought they would mostly.
And this is technically as neutral as a neutral site game could get, since it's pretty much equal distance from Athens and Gainesville to Jacksonville. Essentially, it's the same thing as having the Red River rivalry at the Texas State Fair. It's about equal distance between Austin and Norman. But you said it right there. Georgia's had a lot of slow starts. The Vanderbilt game is the one that I turn to the most as the one where, well, you really should have gotten off the mat for that one. Although they didn't have a locker room because of the construction at Vanderbilt, they had to get on the bus in pads. So
Yeah.
can you imagine Brock Bowers trying to get on the bus? That's nuts. Very quickly, because we're running out of time. 9 undefeated teams left in FBS. Who falls first?
Well, boy, that's a tough one. I want to say Washington because they almost did last week, right? They pulled
Right.
it out at the skin of their teeth. Something tells me, I don't know. I'm not going to say. I'm going to say Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think
yeah.
Kansas is going to get it done. I think that 11 a.m. Central kick is going to be that's also going to be a kicker for Oklahoma too. I think Kansas is going to be ready and raring to go. And look, they're only a 9-point dog in this game, anyways. So
right.
You pick them to cover, they might as well win, right? Who knows? They wear those
Absolutely.
helmets with the big rock chalk on the side of them. They're so hard to beat. Anyways, maybe the ghost of James Naismith will throw him some good luck. Steve Wiseman, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Glad to do it.
Welcome back to a very scary edition of The Score with Brett Wiseman here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. It's our last show of the month of October, the last show of spooky season, last show before Halloween. That's why Ghostface is on my shirt. The only other scary thing that we're going to discuss today will be how the Carolina Panthers, in any way, shape, or form, can beat the Houston Texans. It's a scary thought to think that CJ Stroud is playing better than Bryce Young. It's also a scary thought that some of you are still wrong about thinking that the Panthers should have drafted CJ Stroud. Many of you still have what I like to call recency bias. That's why many of you don't have the jobs that we do. That's why we are smarter than you, and we are paid to do this, and you are not. I rest my case. Josh Scott and Will Higdon joined the program to further the point of the Panthers really shouldn't have drafted CJ Stroud just because of 7 games worth of a sample size. Fellas, this feels like a gut check kind of statement game for these Carolina Panthers coming up, does it not?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially with now Thomas Brown calling the plays. Thank God for that. Thank God he turned over the play calling. We can finally see hopefully something different with this offense. I think Bryce can really show something. Hopefully we'll probably have Austin Corbett back too. That's going to help a lot. And it's going to be a really good game. It's a battle between first and second overall picks. Who doesn't love that?
Yeah, not just first and second overall picks, but first and second overall picks that have a tight friendship. And I think they're going to be really happy to see each other in Charlotte on Sunday. But yeah, hopefully Austin Corbett's back on the field this Sunday. Would not mind that at all. And also wouldn't mind seeing some defensive guys who have been on the bench as well with injuries back on the field as well. Because Lord knows we need a Von Bell back on the field and Xavier Woods back on the field. So hopefully the Panthers can get healthier by the time as this is being recorded by the end of the weekend, and we'll see what happens on Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, you use the bye week to get healthy. At least you would hope, and to come out here against a Texans team that look like there's not a whole lot of names on this team that jump off the page, really. But this is a team that's performing at a pretty high level, mainly because they're doing the one thing we thought they couldn't do, and that's that they're protecting their young quarterback.
Yeah, the Texans, they've got a great staff in place. They have a really good supporting cast around CJ Stroud. They drafted Tank Dell. They got Nico Collins, Robert Woods, Dalton Schultz at tight end. And, yeah, they've been playing with, like, third stringers at times on their offensive line. They've only given up, like, maybe I can count on one hand how many sacks they've given up. They've got them playing as one, and it's really good. They're playing to the players' strengths, which is something that Carolina seems to struggle at times, trying to force a square peg into a round hole, it seems. And yet, I mean, their receivers can get separation, which is another big difference between the Texans and the Panthers, that the Panthers receivers have struggled to get separation at times during this season.
Yeah,
And
well, I
see,
remember
there's
you. Oh, sorry,
yeah,
go ahead, Brett.
Josh, before we get to you, that's a good point, Will, because that's one of the biggest differences I think people aren't recognizing in terms of just when you compare CJ Stroud to Bryce Young. CJ Stroud might be throwing to comparable talent, but I don't know if it's just the schematics of the Texans offense, the route running, whatever it is. 9 times out of 10, the Texans receivers are getting separation off the ball. Panthers receivers simply are not. Now, whether that's in play design, whether that's in simple terms of performance or effort, whatever the reason is, the biggest considerable factor to Bryce Young's struggles has been the fact that he hasn't had a whole lot of time, A, or B, space to get somebody the football. Those are things that CJ Stroud has. This is not a question of CJ Stroud is better than Bryce Young or Bryce Young is better than CJ Stroud, although the latter question we know is the correct one, which is that Bryce Young is better than CJ Stroud. This is not about who's better of the two of them. To this point, the comparison is CJ Stroud has had time to throw the football, and he has had availability with his receivers. His receivers have actually been open. Bryce Young has had to force the ball into a lot of tough spots to receivers that aren't open, that are either single covered or double covered. He's had to force the ball into some really difficult situations, and he hasn't had a whole lot of time to make those decisions as a rookie quarterback.
And Stroud has been able to make these plays. Will, I remember you mentioned it a couple of shows ago with 4 of the starting offensive linemen for the Texans out. These are the backups coming in for the Texans. So kudos to DeMeco Ryans in his first season as Texans head coach for, getting this team pretty well run. And for Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator, for doing a heck of a job with the offense, a very young offense that he has before him on this Texans team. So, kudos to the coaching. And again, the offensive line depth has been there for the Texans this season because CJ Stroud, you don't see rookie quarterbacks throwing 9 touchdowns and just 1 interception over the course of 6 weeks to start a season very often.
Yeah, for sure. Stroud's been playing out of his mind, and credit to him and that coaching staff. They took him and they're confident in him, and it's working out so far. He's been playing really well. But as far as the Bryce versus CJ discussion or comparison, I don't really care about that right now. I just want to see him grow and develop and see more good quarterback play in this league. And as far as that discussion of which one's better, I mean, I'll wait 24 months, 2 years, 2 full seasons worth of tape to really hammer that in. But for now, I just want to watch him play and have a good time watching the game on Sunday.
Yeah, these two guys playing against each other is going to be entertaining. At the end of the day, the entertainment factor is really, for me at least, is the biggest takeaway from this. And I like what you said there, that 2 years of tape. I saw all the tape I needed to see out of college as far as who was better and who wasn't. But anyways, that's I'll rest my case on that one as well and slam the gavel down. But if you're Thomas Brown, are you taking notes from some schematics that you're seeing on film of how this Texans offense operates? Because I see a lot of similarities in I'll use air quotes when I say weapons for CJ Stroud, because Robert Woods and Dalton Schultz aren't necessarily weapons. Adam Thielen and Austin Hooper aren't necessarily weapons. What I'm saying is these are number 1 downfield attack kind of guys. These are plug the gap, fill the hole, roll receivers, blocking tight end kind of people. Dalton Schultz was never the number 1 option in Dallas. Robert Woods was never the number 1 option when he was with the Rams. Austin Hooper wasn't the number 1 option with Atlanta. Kyle Pitts was the number 1 tight end. Hooper was the number 2 tight end. So Adam Thielen was never the number 1 with the Vikings. Justin Jefferson was the number 1 with the Vikings. I'm seeing similarities in terms of the personnel. So if I'm Thomas Brown, I want to take notes here. not just what I'm seeing on film, but what they're doing against my defense to get their guys open, because I have the same talent level on my offense and they're doing things successfully that I'm not.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to playing to the players' strengths. I think one thing we need to see more of is more play action. Get Bryce out of the pocket, get him on the move, run some bootlegs every once in a while, do some outside zone running off of the tackles with Chuba Hubbard and Rasheem Blackshear. Just do more of that stuff. Get a little bit more creative. Do some end arounds. Try some flea flickers. Get some creative plays in there. You can't just do halfback dives and wide receiver screens and just occasional 4 verticals. It doesn't work. You got to mix it up and get more creative with the play calling.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think being more creative and opening up the playbook more is what Thomas Brown needs to do as he's taken over play calling duties for the Panthers. Now, I'm not an offensive coordinator. This is just an opinion. I know the three of us are also well opinionated individuals on the show, but yeah, that's what I think Thomas should do here, and yeah, just keep the Texans on their toes and keep a Texans defense, by the way, that has 2 very young but very capable players on that defense. People forget who the Texans took after C.J. Stroud in the very next pick, Mr. Will Anderson Jr., who used to be a teammate of Bryce Young's at Alabama. He's on this front 7 for the Texans. And, oh, by the way, Henry To'oTo'o, the middle linebacker for them, not only leads the Texans in total tackles, but he also was a teammate with Bryce Young at Alabama. So there are some young, but most certainly, not people to overlook on this Texans defense as well. And I think that's Thomas Brown definitely taking note of that as well, as much as he is how the Houston's offense is being run. He also, I imagine, is keeping note of how the Texans defense is being run as well in these first 6 weeks.
Yeah, and for me, guys, it's not only does Thomas Brown need to be more creative, I think one thing that he should be able to do that Frank Reich just simply didn't even have it within him to even attempt is a more up-tempo style of offense, trying to wear the opposition out, kind of like a hockey team with a heavy forecheck. Just suffocate them with either no huddle or quick 10 to 15 second to the line, snap, try and get a free play, try and catch him, and it's 12 men on the field, substitution, one guy coming on, one guy coming off kind of deal. I don't think Frank Reich ever had it within him to run that kind of a NASCAR style offense, as some people would call it. But Thomas Brown seems like the kind of offensive innovator that would be able to work that in to what's already been built in and make it similar enough to something that Bryce Young may have run at Alabama, a more up-tempo style that the Texans for sure have not seen.
Well, and when Frank Reich did run that up-tempo offense, he ran a little bit against Miami 2 weeks ago. Bryce Young was actually thriving off of that up-tempo offensive play calling, which is interesting because, obviously one would think most quarterbacks tend to, have a bit of a struggle with an up-tempo offense, especially rookie quarterbacks, but Bryce was thriving off of it. So I agree with you there, Brett. I think Thomas Brown has noticed that, and he'll use that to Bryce Young's advantage and see if he can, in a longevity kind of sense, keep that up-tempo mindset going and see if he can continue to thrive off of it, Will.
Yeah, definitely want to see more up-tempo offense. And keep in mind, Thomas Brown does come from the Sean McVay coaching tree, so
Yes.
That's always a real positive thing to have on your resume. Yeah, you want to see more of that type of McVayisms, the stuff that he runs over there and with the Rams is something we want to see more of here. Just play more up-tempo, play more of the Bryce's strengths. Let him cook, man. Just get him out of the pocket. Start letting him cook.
Much like a struggling shooter in basketball needs to see the ball go into the basket just once, even if it's a layup or a free throw. He's got to put something in. Where Bryce Young is at right now, confidence is everything for him. Even if it's a 3-yard out route to the sideline, him completing a pass early on in the game is vital it is critical to his confidence level. It is a huge boost, and it pays dividends throughout the remainder of the game. When you go with that quick 5 to 8 yard, quick pass, up tempo, play style, throw a draw play in there, here and there, maybe run some play action, bootleg, get him out of the pocket. Heck, maybe run a read option. He'll run for 6 yards, slide down, get right back to the line, maybe catch him in a substitution issue. You have to get him in a rhythm and have to let him get comfortable before you start making him force the ball into tougher spots. The problem I feel like this year has been he has not been allowed opportunities to run that offense at a more rapid pace to where he can flick the ball out 4 or 5 times for 5 or 8 yards at a time, get it across midfield, and then kind of start thinking about it. There hasn't been any dink and dunk. There's a positive to dink and dunk, especially for a young quarterback like this. There hasn't been a whole lot of that, and the only time we saw it was the Miami game, and we saw what happened there. You go up 14-0 on one of the best teams in the league. That cannot be overstated. It cannot be understated. You got to circle it, outline it in red, highlight it in yellow, orange, pink, whatever. We have to allow Bryce Young an opportunity to build confidence.
Yeah, 100%. Just like I said, just let him complete some easy passes, complete some easy layups, and just let him cook, build that confidence up, and just play to his strengths. It's really all he can do, especially this early on in his development.
Well, nothing wrong with taking deep shots too. I think there hasn't been
sure.
enough of that as well. I think it's been a little bit of DJ Chark not getting open. Adam Thielen's not really much of a deep threat. Jonathan Mingo hasn't gotten a lot of deep shots thrown his way either. But that confidence that you both have mentioned will build, and I think Bryce will. And we know he's got an arm. I mean, he's the number 1 overall pick. He's got a heck of an arm. So take those deep shots and see what receivers are open. But I think that up-tempo offense should help him a lot. And I think, the confidence will continue to build. Again, remember, guys, Bryce Young's coming off of a 3 passing touchdown performance last week 2 weeks ago against Miami. So that was the first time this season he's thrown more than 1 touchdown pass all season. So, lots of positives to look back on 2 weeks ago coming out of the bye week as the Panthers take on the Texans on Sunday.
The offense is one thing. How in the world does this defense try and slow down this Texans offense right now?
Well, that's going to be tough, especially with all the injuries that they're dealing with right now. And the Panthers are really struggling against the run right now. I think, they're giving up, I think it's like over 5 yards per carry when it comes to the run defense, which is the league average is 4.7. So that's not good, like at all, really. And the injuries to Shaq Thompson and the injury to Shaq, didn't help matters at all. And we don't have much linebacker depth. I mean, KGH has played all right, but I think even Louisville has missed a game at this point. So if they can't stop the run, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And CJ Stroud is another one of those guys that you have to be concerned about using in the run game as well.
Yeah, he doesn't run the ball very much, but when he has, I think back to the college football playoff semifinal game against Georgia when he was at Ohio State. He ran the ball, had a couple of opportunities to run the ball, and he was in open space, and he made the most of it for sure. I'm calling on Brian Burns this weekend, fellas. I think Spider-Man's got to get to the quarterback, and at least 2 or 3 times. He's got 4 sacks on the season, which is good, but not great. And I think Brian Burns, again, if he's wanting that contract to get finalized, I think he's going to have a breakout performance on Sunday. And I know number 0 in Panther Blue can get to the quarterback. He's got that capability, but he's going up against one of the better left tackles in the league too, and Laramie Tunzel for the Texans. So I think you get Brian Burns going this weekend, get Stroud uncomfortable out of the pocket. Derek Brown as well. See if the big DB95 can wreak some havoc. But I'm looking for at least a 2 to 3 sack performance from Brian Burns on Sunday. I think if he can cause that to happen and get the front 7 confidence up, then the Panthers will be at least on their way to a good performance on Sunday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
I think you've got to find a way to get pressure on CJ Stroud, because yes, this makeshift offensive line that they have has been playing out of their minds, but you've got to find a way to give him the one thing he hasn't really faced to this point, which has been a ton of pressure. You have got to make life extremely difficult for him. There has got to be someone breathing down his neck almost every time he drops back. If he gets comfortable, it could be a long afternoon.
Yeah, 100%. You don't want to let him get comfortable in the pocket and give him all day to throw. That's a recipe for disaster.
And when he does throw, I'll say this quickly, Brett. When he does get the opportunity to throw, which he will, I'm calling on our cornerbacks. Dante Jackson got to step up. C.J. Henderson got to make plays. They both have played all right, especially Henderson. He's improved this year, but secondary's got to step up when Stroud airs that ball out down the field.
Yeah, 100% with you. We'll see if the Panthers can take a page out of the book of their co-tenant at Bank of America Stadium, and maybe some of the success from Charlotte FC will rub off on the Carolina Panthers. Vamos, Charlotte FC. Congratulations to them on making the MLS Cup playoff. My St. Louis City SC, they clinched the Western Conference about eons ago, so they've known they were in the playoffs the whole time. So, I haven't really been concerned with any of that. But a general NFL question time. Look, I'll own up to this while I have the opportunity to do so. Yes, Jordan Love has regressed. I may or may not have been premeditated when I sung his praises so epically. But it's not really his fault. And I want to see if you guys agree with me on this quickly. I don't think the offensive struggles are necessarily Jordan Love's fault. I think Aaron Rodgers covered up a lot of garbage in terms of Matt LaFleur's play calling. I think Aaron Rodgers made Matt LaFleur's play designs look 10 times better than they actually were. And now we're seeing, the true colors of the markers that these plays are drawn with. I don't think this is all on Jordan Love. Some of the decision-making has been questionable. Yeah, that throw at the end of the game last week looked like it was cloned more by Brett Favre than it was by Aaron Rodgers. Throw it down the field 60 yards into triple coverage and hope something good happens. Not a throw Aaron Rodgers would have made. Throw Brett Favre would have made 9 times out of 10, even though I was named after him. I can say that. Anyways, I don't think the struggles of this offense are all on him. I think that Matt LaFleur has got to figure out some way to get back to the drawing board, because it is clear and evident to me that 12 and 17, when they were both there, covered up a lot of just sludgy, ugly play calls.
Yeah, Jordan Love, he hasn't exactly shown a lot this season. David Bakhtiari, starting left tackle, I think he's missed a few games.
Yeah, he's out for the rest of the season. That doesn't help.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's bad. Not good there. And, Brett, you might be more familiar with this than I am, but, Christian Watson is like the only real offensive playmaker I can think of on that Packers offense right now. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but...
Well, Aaron Jones would be a playmaker if he actually touched the football. That's the other thing. The only guy that seems to be touching the football in the run game is A.J. Dillon. I know Aaron Jones has been hurt, but you're telling me he can't touch the ball more than 4 times when he's fully healthy? Really? Come on. He's the most experienced offensive weapon you have. Other than him, you have 2 second-year wide receivers, 3 rookie wide receivers, and a pair of rookie tight ends. The most experienced players you have on offense are both your running backs. And Aaron Jones is basically half a slot receiver. So you got to find a way to get that guy involved. You've got to find it. 33 has got to touch the ball more than 4 times. I'm sorry, but Matt LaFleur and also Arthur Smith for not giving Bijan Robinson the ball. Also, both of those instances last Sunday, I played a guy in fantasy that was 0-6. Arthur Smith and Matt LaFleur, both of you giving your respective running backs 4 or less touches, or why I gave that sorry loser his first win. You two should be ashamed of yourselves.
Hey, listen, you gotta make sure he discloses the illness that Bijan had. You don't want to get in the way of the fantasy and the DraftKings bets. You can't get in the way of those. The NFL is actually looking into that, which I find to be really funny.
Yeah, that and the funniest thing was in hockey this week, an NHL player got suspended, and the team that he plays for has a helmet sponsor called Bet365. Oh, the irony. With that, we will say so long for this week. For Josh Scott, Will Higdon, Steve Wiseman, our producer Desmond Johnson, I'm Brett Wiseman. Stay safe and don't eat too much candy, kids.